At Staples Business Advantage, our team of experts can help you find the breakroom products to satisfy everyone's preferences, while AI can
suggest popular items, monitor stock levels, optimize pricing, and automate reordering.
AI can do a lot of things.
But I can never know the taste of a truly great cup of coffee. Sigh.
But you also can't get hangry.
This is true.
Let Staples Business Advantage use today's latest innovations plus our team's experience to make stocking your team's breakroom easier for you.
Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
human.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
For exclusive podcasts and more, sign up at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, she was accused of murdering her 2 children and sent to a psychiatric hospital. If prosecutors can't prove a Maryland mother who killed her kids in 2014 is no longer insane, the charges will be dropped. Is she faking it? We'll discuss the podcast Unrestorable. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Rebecca.
Also with us.
You feel like you have like the whole day to do something, and it's like, oh yeah, proofread the script.
Oh.
And I forgot to, yeah.
Are you saying that how I just like read those 2 lines that I was supposed to read?
People will never know because they've been removed.
They didn't hear that part.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Why are you pointing out your own mistake when they didn't hear it?
Because I take...
Also with us is private investigator. This is why there's so many memes about you, Kevin.
I don't give a fuck.
No, you don't give a fuck.
I'll just call the vampire Mike. I don't care.
You're like a chivalrous dude who cares about his wife, and you give 0 fucks. That's like who you are.
I know, it's so
also
sexy.
with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of the Piper Green series of cozy mysteries, Laura Bricker. Hey, Laura.
Hey, Rebecca.
All right. And finally, our resident Doubting Thomas, author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of the Strange Arrivals podcast, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast host, Toby Ball. Hi, Toby.
Hello, Rebecca.
All right, Kevin, my hero.
Yes.
My lobster, as someone called you on Reddit. What is coming up on next Monday's podcast, since we are obviously recording Thursday's show right now?
It's not obvious at all. It shouldn't be obvious.
It's obvious to me. You know why?
It's obvious to you. Why?
Because I'm reading on the script right now that this is show B, which is the Thursday show.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's coming up on Monday's show?
Yes.
It's called The Kids of Rutherford County. It's a new podcast from Serial Podcasts.
All right. So we had that to look forward to. So we have a podcast to review tonight. I think we should get to it.
Is it tonight?
Today.
Is it Thursday? Is it obvious?
It's Thursday.
It's none of these things.
Listen, the space-time continuum, daylight saving time, which, by the way, is how you say it, not daylight savings. It's daylight saving time, which means that when we get up, it's bright and sunny. And by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you want to roll up in a cocoon of blankets.
I don't feel like it saved any daylight. It's just darker.
I like it. It makes me feel like I live in Alaska. All right. Should we just talk about this podcast and just get to it?
Yeah.
All right. I think that we should go there. Let's do the business that we do. What do you think, Toby? Should we do that? He didn't really chimed in yet.
What, do our business?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like those kids at Disney?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's get to it. Let's drop that first clip right now. This is a grim one. I feel like that was a terrible transition. Let's do it anyway. Leading off.
I mean, maybe you didn't want to go there in your mind that she had done something with the children, but there was a reason why she wasn't supposed to be alone with them, right?
Right. And it wasn't that anyone actually at that point believed that she would physically, purposely hurt them. It was more of the decision-making stuff.
In 2014, Catherine Hoggle returned home without her 3-year-old and 2-year-old children. Though their bodies have never been recovered, Hoggle was placed in a psychiatric facility to treat her mental illness and restore her competency for trial.
It was obvious to me, without disclosing anything confidential, that there were profound mental health issues for Catherine, clearly and profoundly not well.
But Maryland law states if a defendant is still deemed incompetent after 5 years, their charges will be dropped. With the deadline approaching, both prosecutors and the children's father accuse Hoggle of faking it, trying to run out the clock and avoid prison.
This is the story of two kids whose definitive fates are unknown and a mother who has been found not competent to stand trial for their murders. But it's also the story of unintended consequences, about a legal system that was set up to protect people, but actually raises questions about public safety.
In the new podcast, Unrestorable, journalists Sarah Treleaven and Beth examine the balance between a father's quest for justice and the rights of people with mental illness in the justice system. Meanwhile, one key question that overshadows this case, can you really fake being incompetent and get away with murder? Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about plot points from Unrestorable, so if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes for our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Laura, I have to say, when I was listening to this podcast, I was very worried that I would be alone in my basically overall feelings of discomfort about the show. And your very first note addresses the core of my feelings because it is incredibly hard to not feel tremendously for the family affected by the crime at the center of this, right? Or the alleged crime at the center of this, of course, because we don't actually know what happened to these children. However, there's definitely a point of view in this podcast, right?
Right. So I definitely, going into this, and I was really interested in listening to this podcast. You know, I work in the criminal justice system, was very curious about this particular issue. I've kind of went into this thinking, oh, this is going to be really interesting. They're going to examine this issue. And right away, you can't help but not feel sympathy for Troy, the father, who doesn't know what happened to the two children. But right off the bat, there was just something about the tone with this podcast that made me feel like this is really very one-sided, and it is very much slanted against those who are living with mental illness. And it was all from the perspective of Troy, and I totally understand what he's going through. But I felt like even the tone of the narration and everything insinuated that there was some master plan at work here for this woman to be faking her mental illness. But it was right off the bat, it rubbed me the wrong way. And I couldn't really put my finger on it at first. And then the more it went on, I was like, oh, because we're only hearing one side of this. And it's almost like we don't even believe there's another possibility of something that's going on here.
I mean, it very much is from Troy's point of view. And Toby, you had a similar note, and I'd like to give you the chance to expand on that. I feel like even though we can have Catherine's point of view, obviously, there are ample opportunities to fill in many things. And the podcast, I think, does try, and on some level, especially when the legal episodes, just to sort of, bring in certain experts to talk about it. Troy's narrative of what it was like being married to Catherine, what she was like as a person, what happened that day, how, sort of all things sort of have fallen in before, after, and since. Troy's narrative is the spine of the podcast. And of course, we don't have any concrete reason to not be like, oh, that's 100% definitely what happened. How did you feel about that, Toby, when you were listening to this?
Well, it's interesting because there's a combination of a lot of the stuff that he talks about is actually making the case against him. From his viewpoint, the stories that he tells make it sound like she is extremely mentally ill.
Catherine also became increasingly paranoid. She kept insisting she was being followed. At one point, she asked Troy to buy a staple gun and shoot her with it. Troy couldn't ignore things anymore.
I'm like, hold on, there's been a progression here. This isn't the same as it was when she was pregnant with my first child. This has gotten worse.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Did that sometimes sound like she might, and I don't want to speculate at all. I sometimes was wondering, is there something to be explored there, but a potential a opioid addiction or some sort of other issue here where she needs money and she's in the middle of nowhere, and there's no other possibilities at all being explored here around that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's weird that it's dropped.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's clearly something going on, and if it doesn't speak to mental illness, it speaks to something that will probably exacerbate mental illness.
Right.
So you've got that, but you've also got Troy, and it is understandable, is angry. He just seems like he gets the first and last word on just about everything, including like her parents, like who's the biggest enabler, and they're just coming up with some bullshit. And it seems like the facts that he divulges point in a different direction from the emotion that he shows and what his desired outcome is. So in the end, like, I kind of feel as though if you read a transcript, you'd probably get a different sense of how this all was going. But, I found myself like completely disagreeing with him and thinking she's completely mentally ill, and whether she thinks there's some advantage to it or not, I don't know. But there's nothing about her background that makes it seem more likely that she's pretending than that she really is.
It is hard, like, when you don't have, like, that person there, like Catherine in particular here, and is not overly represented in the story. I'm not 100% sure how you cure that. Some podcasts like that doesn't seem to be a problem. You try to cover it with family and attorneys and experts and things like that. But it sounds like what we're saying here is that Troy is supposed to be the emotional center of this story, like we often have somebody who is, but we are having trouble, and by we, I guess we're saying the people here, are having a trouble making an emotional connection to him because of his demeanor.
That's not it for me.
Not it for you? Okay.
No. That's not it for me. I think it's that we need another side. Like, we need another perspective sounding.
I would agree. I would agree. And I think I'm more interested in the idea about, I have sympathy for young Catherine here. The question really is divided into, was she insane at the time of the kid's disappearance? Legally insane. Yeah. And how is she today? And I like for, past Catherine there, to me, it was very obvious. And I think it was obvious to everybody else, too, that she was in trouble. I think everybody did everything right, the way they were supposed to, try to get her treatment and have her committed, and then, have sort of a plan when she came home and that kind of thing. And they also pointed out that even with her bipolar symptoms in her youth, put on top of that she was pregnant, like she had a 2 and a 3 and a 5-year-old. So there's all those postpartum difficulties. Like, if you're depressed, you're somebody who's at risk of postpartum depression. If you have a psychosis, you're at high risk for a postpartum psychosis, right? Being pregnant and having going through a postpartum period doesn't cure existing mental illnesses. It often makes them worse. And so I do feel very badly for her and that she needs treatment. But there is a larger question about, is she malingering? And is the system set up the right way? And I think like both things can be true. I think you can recognize that this was a very disturbed woman who very likely killed her 2 youngest children, but today is in a position where she should be able to stand trial.
This is okay. So we'll talk about this more in a couple minutes, but this is like an interesting thing to me. And this is what like points the deficiency of the podcast, right? We hear later in a detail that they drop this very quick little passage without, and this is like a weakness of the podcast, the signposting and the timelines and the TikTok of what happened. The only real TikTok we get is when Troy talks about that day driving from place to place, right? Other TikTok stuff is so unclear. Like he talks about her running away. Like, where did she go? When was she caught? Like, what happened then? What happened then? And then you just get like these vague inferences to police looking and that, but you don't really hear a lot. Later in the podcast, there's this dropped detail that the morning earlier that day, when the kids were, quote, supposed to be at daycare, she was in a treatment situation, so ostensibly like in a day therapy situation, and made a offhanded joke or comment about strangling her kids, right? So that day, ostensibly before all this went on, she's already in a day treatment situation being treated for something, right? Mm-hmm. Does that not point to the fact that we're already talking about somebody who has to go to a day treatment program for psychiatric issues? So if we are to try somebody today for a thing they did, who are we trying? Like if this person is restored, are we trying the same person? That's the deficiency with this podcast, is that Laura, I mean, don't you feel like just the deficiency of just like the timelines and the TikToks and the sort of understanding what happened where and who was where when would really help in sort of understanding the unfolding of the story a little bit better?
In terms of where the different people were, like from a police perspective?
Yes, like the police investigation and what happened that day. And then and who Catherine was before. And
right.
who,
Yeah, no, and we have like Troy's version and he does like his root talk and we kind of go through where they were going. But I guess for me, I recognize that HIPAA makes it hard to talk to some of the mental health professionals in this case. But I would like to hear from the police. I would like to know, like, what do they think happened? Like, I would like to know a little bit more about the investigation, the ongoing investigation. That, to me, was something that I felt like could have bolstered up so that we did have something other than just Troy in there. And I, like we were saying before, Rebecca, about going to this day program, like it's clear early on that the whole family recognized that she had a mental illness, that she should not be alone with the children. And they tried to get her help. You see that, I mean, it was like one of the things as they're describing that, you can see the setup to the story. Like, you know where this is going to go. Like, I'm like, oh, the kids are going to go missing. But then part of what I was having a hard time sort of rectifying is we have that recognition, but then now we're like, no, but now we think she's faking. And I'm like, right. But clearly y'all recognized that something pretty serious was going on, but like she was to the point that she couldn't be alone with the kids, this and that. But now we're like, no, she's faking. So I feel like there's a disconnect in that part of the storyline for me.
I feel like at the end, and there's another episode that we haven't listened to, I guess, but at the end, they do talk to that cop who reveals some information, like when we found her, she had dirt under her fingernails.
Found her where?
You're right.
We never hear how she was
The
found.
implication being that she was probably in the woods burying the kids. So it seems to me, when I was sort of trying to sort of wrestle with that myself, is that there's this very concrete stuff that happened before the kids disappeared that show that they were concerned about her, right? Her mental health, especially around the kids. And Laura mentioned it, you know, she's going to this day program. They won't leave her alone with the kids. Like, there's always got to be either her parents or Troy has got to be around when she has the kids. And then afterwards, when they're trying to establish that she is competent, the stuff that they come up with is so weak, in my opinion. It's things like, well, she had this diagram that showed that if she's competent, she goes to prison. And if she's not competent, she goes home. So, you know, they basically drew it out for her. And then at one point, I think it's one of the prosecutors says something about how her attorney told her to refuse to answer questions. So she goes ahead and does it. And the prosecutor's like, well, I think that shows that she's able to work with her attorneys. It's like, I don't think that's really what that shows. I think that shows that somebody gives her a very simple command, which is don't talk about this. She can do it. Working with your attorneys is a lot more involved than that. And it's like aiding in your defense and stuff. So I just kind of felt like there's a lot of evidence at the beginning that Troy provides. And then later, when they're trying to prove that she's not incompetent, they're really sort of grasping at straws to show it. And part of it is they're not around her very much. But part of it also is it doesn't seem like there's anything very profound that they can point to say, yeah, see, she's faking.
Yeah, if you want something profound, you have to listen to our podcasts on Patreon.
Kevin, what a smooth transition.
Toby made a face like, I can't believe I just walked into that myself.
That's true. That's true. And Kevin, I was like, how are we going to sensitively go into the business section? I have to say, Kevin,
Toby will lead me there.
You just directly went into it. No trying to make, it was very good. Very, very sensitive.
I was worried you were going to be like, you'd have to be crazy not to.
Yes. Way to ruin it, Toby.
Yeah, all right.
Sorry.
That's Toby Ball.
All right, yeah.
Toby Ball NH.
Nice job. He'll be here all night, folks.
Don't forget to at him.
Yes, have the veal.
But in the meantime, we urge you to join us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Partners in Crime
Media.
I was doing the math in my head, or back of the envelope, let's say. You, fair listener, if you have listened to every episode of Crime Writers On.
Yes.
Over the years.
Yes.
And then your presence in the audience, something the advertisers want. So we get paid by, X amount of thousands of listens and whatever for you. I'd say that you personally have helped us earn about $60. Each individual person,
Thank
right?
you.
Because you've heard enough, right? 60. I mean, that's how much money do you think you personally have earned a television station? Or whatever, you know, if you break it down,
You've earned a television station a lot more money.
You earned, yes. You didn't have to give any money, but you helped us earn. Your wage right now is $60.
If you listen since 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What am I doing new math or old math?
No,
here?
I'm just curious.
Okay, yeah.
I, if your calculations are correct, I mean, if they listen to like how many years of content would that be if they listen to every episode since 2014? It's like thousands of hours of content, right?
Yes.
Wow. Good on you guys.
Yes. So we thank you for listening. That's why they say, oh, you want listeners,
like,
you want clicks.
You owe us $1 million.
That's because we throw you all in a big pile, and all this time, you personally, $60, but you didn't open your wallet for that $60.
No.
Your presence got it, but you know, if you would like to help keep us going on,
yes,
you could open that wallet.
Yes.
And support us at the $5, $6, $15 level.
Yes.
On Patreon, patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media, what you will get is exclusive access to content like the Crime Writers on After Show, Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, our Married with podcast, which we give advice. Somebody asked questions about what do you do about your will and estate for your stepkids?
I love that
and what
question.
if one of them is an ingrate?
Love that question.
Do you divide it 4 ways, or do you go 30, 30, 30, 10?
I loved that question.
Fucking King Lear here. And you also can listen to Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club. Toby's latest book is coming out. It's called The Man Who Invented Motion Pictures. And this is actually a crime story, Toby.
Yeah, sort of. It's certainly marketed as a crime story. There's a hell of a lot about the sort of the development of movies and how hard it was and the technical stuff and all the different people who are doing it, including Thomas Edison, who is not shown off in a very good light. But yeah, there is
Is he the killer?
Well, some people think so. I don't think they think he necessarily did it, but might have had people do it for him.
Ooh.
Yes, because the guy who invented motion pictures disappeared before he could introduce his, invention to the world.
He up and vanished.
Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting book. It's not quite as hardcore crimey as most of our things are.
Also, we have in Partners in Crime land, yesterday dropped the latest episode of These Other Stories, the Law & Order podcast. On that episode, we talked about a classic SVU episode called Heightened Emotions. This is the one where the victim is also a sex worker and also the world record pole vaulter.
I'm a tabloid headline. The pole vault hooker.
We're gonna find a way out of this.
No, we won't. There's no coming back from something like this.
Lastly, we encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. That's absolutely free. You go to crimewriterson.com. It's right at the top. Put your email address in there, and we'll send you every week a free newsletter that has everything, including summaries of our reviews, Crime Writers on behind the scenes, merch of the week, pet of the week, crime of the week,
yes,
post of the week, all sorts of great stuff.
One more plug for our Patreon.
Yeah.
I might send you a personal email, and randomly, maybe you'll get some bespoke merch in the mail. You never know.
Never know.
Some people have gotten bespoke merch in the mail from me in the last couple weeks, and they've been like, what is this for? And I'm like, I like you. You've been around for a while. You never know.
Never know.
You never know. All right, Kevin, before we end the business section, do we have any? Wait for it. Oh, another benefit. You could become Patreon Patron Saint of the Week. Do we have any of those, Kevin?
Our Patreon Patron Saints of the Week are Melinda Jacobovitz and Allison Miller.
Oh!
Bless you.
Can I say something about Melinda?
Yeah.
Melinda, I hope your car is okay.
Ah, yeah,
That's
there's
all I gotta say. And I hope that you get a bear and a wrestler with your Patreon subscription. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
I don't know what that is. All right.
She's a John Irving fan. That's the thing I happen to know about Melinda.
Okay.
All right, Kevin, does that end the business section?
Yeah, those ends the business section.
I'm gonna go ahead and fade that music out right now. Kevin, who's our next sponsor?
Our next sponsor is Academic Approach.
Whoa.
Have you ever considered the power of a personal trainer in a gym?
Yes.
I have, obviously. Look at me.
Yeah, you're very fit. That's the first thing people say when they see us is how fit we are.
Yeah, exactly. But those personal trainers, what do? They assess your fitness level, they understand what your goals are, and they create a workout that's just for you.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's like no leg day.
Same.
Now imagine that kind of tailored approach for your brain.
Wow.
So welcome to Academic Approach, where they believe that every student deserves a personalized training plan for their mind. Their expert tutors are like personal trainers for your academic fitness, creating a learning plan that fits you. No push-ups, though. It's just all in the mind.
All in the brain.
Yeah. Say goodbye to that one-size-fits-all tutoring approach and say hello to a tailored academic workout with Academic Approach. So you ready to build your personalized academic fitness plan?
Yep.
Our podcast listeners can get an exclusive offer. They visit academicapproach.com/crimewriters.
Crime Writers.
And I'm going to say, given the nature of this product, do not spell crime writers without the W. I've seen that sometimes in CRI. It's understandable.
CRO instead of CWO.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Visit academicapproach.com/crime writers.
At Staples Business Advantage, our team of experts can help you find the breakroom products to satisfy everyone's preferences, while AI can
Suggest popular items, monitor stock levels, optimize pricing, and automate reordering.
AI can do a lot of things.
But I can never know the taste of a truly great cup of coffee. Sigh.
But you also can't get hangry.
This is true.
At Staples Business Advantage, we help you select from 2,000 breakroom products, so you can be sure there's something for everyone.
Yum. Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
human.
The friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac, and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
So, Kevin, one of the things that's interesting to me is that we're asking a judge here, right, to make this decision. And I just want to say real quick, from my own point of view, that we have a woman here who's going to be institutionalized. She's already been institutionalized for years. And it's very likely that even if the judge doesn't go Troy's way, that she could be institutionalized for the rest of her life, which in my opinion is a better place for her than the other kind of institution that Troy would prefer she be in. That's just my opinion. That being said...
Let me just correct you on one thing here.
Yes.
This isn't Troy suing her.
Correct.
Right? We keep putting it off of it's like Troy, like it's a civil suit.
I agree.
It's the state of Maryland.
Correct.
Wants to bring a criminal prosecution.
But the podcast is putting it like it's Troy's preference. So that's why I'm putting it on. That's
well,
why
it's obviously
that's what
Troy's
I
preference.
Keep putting it on Troy.
Okay, yeah.
But we are asking a judge to make this decision, and the judge was given a list of questions by the prosecution side that they would prefer he ask her, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about a judge being asked to make this call?
See, it's tricky because the judge is the only one that has the authority in the courtroom to make this determination. However, the judge really isn't a medical expert. So normally judges like this defer to the medical experts on this, and there is a mixed recommendation here. I mean, obviously, the people that are currently treating Catherine say that she is still incompetent or unable to help in her own defense. But I thought that the whole questioning aspect of that was really interesting. I really thought that she was about to get railroaded because it seemed like these were very simple questions, and I'm like, if he's going to determine that she's completely sane based on this little bit here, I'm like, do
you know what attorney-client privilege is, and that's it?
Yeah, and it's like, no, because she has the presumption of innocence, and she's coming in already sort of the idea that she is incompetent. It's not about proving that she's incompetent. It's about proving that she's no longer incompetent, right, that she has been restored. So I thought, just to take that a little bit amount of time and then, make a big decision, sort of reversing course, I thought, oh my God, it should be a little deeper than that. And by the time it came up, where are we going to be? By that time, as a listener, I'm like, no, I think she's faking it.
Yeah.
I think she's malingering. I do think that
you thought that?
Yeah, I got there. Yeah.
You did?
I do that. Yeah, I believe that she...
Why?
Well, I'm thinking about the murder cases that I've covered where people were found to be insane, and the ones that I felt were truly insane from a legal medical aspect. And the woman I'm thinking of, just could not function in society. I'm not talking, Sheila LaBarre is the case of somebody that I think kind of, has a personality disorder, but not insane. I'm thinking of a woman by the name of Ada Geigel who killed her son and just is still in the secure psychiatric facility, and just is somebody who would not, you could put them out in the, in the world and would not be able to function in a way. They will never be able to do that without intensive care. And I just don't get the sense that she is the person who has deteriorated and has not been able. I'm not a doctor. I'm not in the room. That's just my gut feeling is that she 100% was having difficulties and 100% killed her kids. And today, I don't know, but I don't feel like the treatment has been unsuccessful. I have that feeling, some of the doctors are.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you feel like I'm sorry, I put you on the spot here. Do you feel like this is an Andrea Yates style question, right? Andrea Yates, who drowned her kids and the 5 kids in the bathtub. She was very, very ill when she did that. If somebody who is a different person than they are when they were very ill, are you prosecuting the same person?
Well, you're asking that question then about the entire justice system.
Well, that's the question.
The entire justice. Well, no, but this is different because in Maryland they have a specific statute that says you can't do it this time. You got to throw the whole thing out. And a lot of places you're like, no, we're just putting this on hold until you can.
I don't not love the Maryland system. I personally don't not love it. I'm just saying I don't necessarily think it's a bad. Laura, what do you think? Because we're not talking about somebody who's likely to be walking around in 4 days.
Well, that's kind of my point here is that they've gotten her stabilized to a point through whatever therapy medications she is on. But I guess I'm looking at it like if she was out, I can't imagine that she would be able to maintain this level of healthy, whatever. You're not healthy. I don't feel if she was out.
We don't know. We heard her for like 30 seconds in the podcast on tape in a courtroom.
But I guess my thing is this. It's not like because they're not pursuing these charges and because she's not competent that she's like out living her best life. She's like civilly committed and she's going to be there in this institutional setting. And that is where she's going to remain. Right?
Yeah,
indefinitely.
So that's the thing. It's basically like she's in a prison, but she's in a prison that is geared towards dealing with and managing mental illness.
Which we wish more people could be in if they do have mental illness.
Right. But the tragedy is that, yes, that is where she is. It's not like she's out, but there's no resolution in terms of what happened to the kids. And that is the tragedy of the end of this story is that we're probably never going to know, which is really sad. But the other tragedy of this is mental illness. So there's like 2 really huge tragedies, very different when you look at them, in terms of, like who's being impacted and everything. But she's not going anywhere. She's in the hospital.
Yeah. Toby, there's something that also comes through to me. And I don't think I'm alone. I'm the only first person who's ever thought this. But there's this sort of strata of the worst crimes you can possibly commit, right? And a woman killing her children just seems to be the world's most unforgivable crime. Granted, it's fucking horrible, and I'm not saying it's not, but she's very, very ill, and I feel like the podcast is asking us to take a leap. Kevin, I believe it's your notes that said that we hear in the podcast, we hear them wishing them luck before the hearing.
Yeah, they had a Zoom call with Troy and his wife and attorney.
We hear the reporters wishing them luck before the hearing, right? So there's just sort of implied thing that the right resolution would be justice, right? And the right justice would be, a criminal prosecution and a criminal result for this woman who is going to be confined in some way anyway. It strikes me that is the tone of this podcast, and that it is sort of the tone of stories around this that are very tragic anyway. I don't know. There's just something about that fundamentally worries me, and I feel like a missed opportunity in the podcast is that. And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Not that there's anything wrong with a story being in a podcast, not that there's anything wrong with the things that are in this podcast, but that is something that also could have been here is how do we tell these stories? How don't we tell these stories? And we've heard that in other stories like this, where there's an angle here that we often get, and here's an angle that we often miss, and let's unpack that a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so.
There's some missed opportunities, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
There's some missed opportunities, I think. It's hard because I do feel thinking back on the last 20 minutes of conversation is Troy, who he's a victim in this too. And I think the instinct to try and undercut him a little bit has more to do with the way the podcast is presented than anything to do with him. Because you kind of feel again, it's somebody kills your kids. I can't imagine. And the need for something just must be overwhelming. And I think that's, for Troy, and I get that this idea that she was mentally ill, therefore there's no responsibility. And that is being shown by the fact that she's going to stay in a mental hospital instead of going to prison, which is where she would go if we were sort of clear-eyed about her role in this, right? So I guess I wanted to say that. But I do think by taking that viewpoint so centrally and not showing, you don't even have to push back on it, but you just have to show alternatives. Like, it is kind of lacking. There's no question about what the sort of viewpoint of the podcast is, and it doesn't really delve into the nuances on this thing, because it's unlike some other stuff that we've done where there's like clearly like this guy's innocent and he's in jail and that's not good, unless something really, really weird happened. She did kill her kids, and it's just a matter of how do we sort of assess her mental state and her ability to aid in her own representation, and what does that all mean? And that to me seems like it needs a little bit more of a nuanced treatment than here's this guy who went through this unimaginable tragedy and let's look at it through his eyes. And that doesn't seem fair to him.
Right. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to get to. Yes. And
it doesn't seem fair to the listeners, because you're either getting caught up in his sort of emotional, just profound pain, which is just absolutely the most understandable thing in the world, but it's not what our justice system runs on. So then the alternative is to like trying to be keeping that at arm's length, and that doesn't seem to be doing him justice either. So I don't know. It's flawed. I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to, is that I don't think anybody's well served by it. I think there's some smart stuff in here, and I think there's interesting stuff, but I don't think it's what it needed to be in order to give like a real thoughtful, full picture of this, of a very sort of nuanced subject.
Yeah, I mean, I have my big unanswered legal question is such that if they had gone to, if she had been found restored and could have aided in her defense, and then they went to trial, could she then enter an insanity plea and argue, well, I was ill at the time when this happened, and therefore? Because this is, this custodial hold is not something, she didn't make an insanity plea. I don't even know if she's entered a plea yet, but it's very possible, right, that she could go to jail and then be convicted, and that sentence is you go to this or a different secure psychiatric unit, or that you're innocent by reason of insanity, or however they structure it in Maryland, and then you go right back to this hospital. Or you're still in the hospital. There's still a chance that you could get out and walk out of the hospital easier than out of prison.
How do you feel about the fact that you don't know that? Because the podcast never tells you that.
Well, they did. Wait a minute. They did talk a little bit about, like, it is an affirmative defense. So in order to take that, she would have to say, yes, I killed my kids, right? And they did talk about that. I mean, I think you guys are like saying they didn't do all of this, and they did, but for whatever reason, it just didn't resonate with all of you. Yeah, that's fine. So, I mean, what happened to the kids is, it's very unusual that two small bodies could be placed somewhere and never recovered for 10 years.
Is it unusual?
Yeah, it's fairly unusual. Yeah. But, the question just sort of remains, about what happened to them. I get why grandma wants to believe that the grandchildren live in some place. Yeah. She's like, I don't care for the very much, like, well, I believe she got in touch with the right people. And, well, I have my reasons. I can't really say. I mean, it's all very weak tea to me, and I'm glad that they kind of push back ever so gently on the ludicrous nature of, like, how that would work. Like, you would just give away, again, because we had a similar...
Because your daughter would not be prosecuted even if there were just a Polaroid of a kid somewhere.
Yeah, just throw one out there. Yeah. So, anyway, I thought that there were other legal questions here that were interesting. However, I'll point out before we move on is that these are very short episodes, these 7 that we've heard, 8. So there's not a lot of extra thrown in, but I feel like it gets what needs to be said, where I think you guys still feel like it's lacking.
At Staples Business Advantage, our team of experts can help you find the breakroom products to satisfy everyone's preferences, while AI can
suggest popular items, monitor stock levels, optimize pricing, and automate reordering.
AI can do a lot of things.
But I can never know the taste of a truly great cup of coffee. Sigh.
But you also can't get hangry.
This is true.
Let Staples Business Advantage use today's latest innovations, plus our team's experience, to make stocking your team's breakroom easier for you.
Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
human.
the friendship is sharing deal.
Because I want one of your McNuggets.
And I need some of your Quarter Pounder.
There's a deal for everyone at McDonald's. Get one favorite like 10-piece chicken McNuggets, a Quarter Pounder, or a Big Mac and get another for just $1. Price and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Luxury is meant to be livable. Discover the new leather collection at Ashley with premium quality leather sofas, recliners, and more, all built to last. No matter how many spills, scuffs, or pet-related mishaps come its way, the leather collection at Ashley is made with the durability you need for the whole family. Shop the new leather collection at Ashley and find chairs starting at $499.99 and sofas at $599.99. Ashley, for the love of home.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out Unrestorable? It's a new podcast. Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up for thumbs down for this podcast?
I'm going a mild thumbs down. What I didn't like about this podcast was what I felt like was sort of this tone for me and this is just my, interpretation, this tone that really rubbed me the wrong way. I felt like it was slanted against being maybe more aware of mental illness. And it had to me, it felt very one-sided, and I'm not trying to diminish like the pain of the tragedy that this family has gone through, trying to find their 2 children, Jacob and Sarah. But I didn't like the approach that was taken with that. And I felt like if they were going to take that approach, I would have liked to have heard a little bit more on the flip side, from somebody legally. And we did, but just more about the issue of restorability in other ways that we didn't hear about. So it's a mild thumbs down for me, probably a full thumbs down, but I'm going to say mild thumbs down. And that's where I come in.
Toby Ball, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Unrestorable?
I guess I'm a thumb sideways on this. I mean, I think it's a really interesting topic that they bring up, which is, how does the justice system deal with questions of mental illness and competency to stand trial and stuff. But it's not really, I think, handled in a way that captures all the complications and nuances of the subject. It seems it's kind of coming from a certain point of view, which I don't really think does the case justice and even like the people whose point of view is being represented. But it's not, I mean, it's not like horrible. I think some of the reporting is good. And I do think the subject is fascinating. It just doesn't feel like they quite did what they needed to do with it in order to get a thumbs up from me, at least. So thumb sideways.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, I'm going thumbs up. I guess I like this more than the rest of you. And I would say that I do hear your criticisms. I think the things you say that they didn't address, I think they did, but probably it's just not to your natural satisfaction or it didn't resonate with you. But I will agree that it does feel a little one-sided. That's okay, I guess. I kind of understand why. I thought the Root Talk episode was very well done, and it does open up a whole lot of other questions here about how we treat people with mental illness when they cross paths with the justice system. And as they point out, so many people who are incarcerated are there because of a mental illness or an issue with that, and probably would be better served in a facility other than prison to get that kind of treatment, to get those kind of medications and whatnot. But this particular case is fascinating because it has the twist of the ticking clock here on the charges. Is it too late to ever come back and charge them again?
The state doesn't think so.
State doesn't think so. But anyway, I don't want to spoil it at all. I'm going to remain a thumbs up.
Yeah, I'm a thumb sideways on this too. I mean, I think that it's a very interesting case. Some of the issues that were raised are very interesting. It's an extremely flawed podcast in terms of the way it was handled. Kevin, I know you say that some boxes were ticked in terms of things that were addressed, but if the 3 out of the 4 of us didn't hear it or didn't land with us, then that wasn't properly done or done well enough. I just think about stories and how we look at them differently today than we may have looked at them when they happened, or than they were looked at when, like I look at stories like Andrea Yates, look at stories like Lorena Bobbitt, I look at stories like Nikki Adamando from Believe Her, right? Mm-hmm. People who, on their face did something horrible. But like, who were they when they did something horrible? What was going on in their lives when they did something horrible? And granted, there are things that are on their face unforgivable, but are we going to throw these people away forever? Are we going to do X? Are we going to do Y? Are we going to do Z? And there are just certain questions that this podcast just chose not to tackle. That's why it's thumb sideways for me instead of thumbs up. So I'm just going to leave it there. And, so it's a thumb sideways. All right, that's going to do it for us. But before we go, Laura Bricker, do we have a cat of the week this week?
So I had a cat of the week lined up from one of our listeners.
But
Susie Salmon, I loved your costumes on your dogs. But today there was breaking news in the animal world.
What?
This is so exciting. The sheep named Fiona was rescued from a cliff in Scotland where she has been stuck for more than 2 years.
Wait, hit pause, Laura. So is this listener not going to get any recognition? We put them in the newsletter
I'm
or
two
something?
cats of the week this week. That's what's actually happening here.
Okay.
I am obsessed with this. So the world's loneliest sheep, Fiona, lonely no more, rescued from the base of a cliff in Scotland. She has lived there in a cave for 2 years after apparently falling down the hill. There was no way to rescue Fiona until recently. 5 farmers rescued Fiona by climbing down the cliff and putting her in a canvas feed bag. And they had a little hole so that she could see out and pulling her back up.
2 years.
2 years.
Jesus.
There was actually a race to rescue Fiona. The animal rights people had been out visiting her, getting her used to people before lifting her off the cliff. But the group of farmers beat them to it and took her to a farm that's open to the public. So I kind of want to go to Scotland just to go see Fiona, but 2 years on a cliff.
Wow. So what about those costume dogs?
Susie Salmon, Moose, Petey, and Jackie in their recent Halloween costumes, only murders in the House of Terriers.
I love that for them. I love that for them.
Were rescue pups. Moose was adopted from a pit bull rescue by one of her former students. Petey scammed me into adopting him from a shelter pet adoption fair at the Fancy Mall in my town. And Jakey was a foster fill from a local rescue. So anyway, they have amazing pictures. Yeah, so it's a double cat of the week this week. But it's the Steve Martin one actually, I think, looks really good. I mean, the whole thing is amazing. The Selena Gomez character actually has the beats on. That dog actually has beats on its head.
Beats like Schrute Farm?
Like beats like you know how she had the headphones on?
The Beats headphones.
So there you go. So yeah, so that's it. Double cat of the week this week in Crime Writers On Universe.
All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you, of course, they can always email us at crimewriterson@gmail.com to send their animals or put them in Facebook. But if they want to reach out to you on social media, Laura Bricker, how can people find you there to submit any kind of animal to be Cat of the Week?
You can find me at Laura Bricker on Twitter.
All right, Toyobo, what about you? How can you be found online?
I just want to do a quick animal notice in that our 15-year-old cat, Hunter, who my kids grew up with, finally passed away a couple days ago after a battle with cancer.
Hunter.
So it's kind of a down week at the Ball-Walden household, but he was not in pain. And the last 3 weeks after we knew he was sick, he got a lot of good hanging out with the family and got treated like the king that he always knew he was. So anyway, that's the deal. And you can find me at TobyBallNH on Twitter.
Kevin Flynn, how can you be found online?
I'm at Kevin P. Flynn.
Well, you can join all of our listeners in our incredible Facebook discussion group. Please, please, please join us there. Just go to Facebook, find the link for our group at the top of our regular page. We will let you in if you know any one of our names. You can follow us everywhere else, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere else at Crime Writers On, and you can follow me everywhere at Reb Lavoie. Get episodes early and ad-free and all the other stuff we make at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media for those of you who are willing to throw in a few extra bucks to support our work. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our audio editor is the incredible Livy Burdett. The executive producer of this program is the man who gives no fucks, the husband and love of my life, Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in the Treehouse Yoga Studio above the Mockingbird Cafe in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, The Closet, in a New Hampshire basement where Kevin has also accused me of faking it. Yeah, Kevin, I see what
it's
you did
your own
there.
loss.
On behalf of all the crime writers, thanks so much for listening.
You got yourself to blame.
We'll catch you later.
You can only work with what you got, Kevin.
This is a grim one. I feel like that was a terrible transition. Let's do it anyway. Leading off.
Dropping that clip like you're in line for Big Thunder Mountain.
Driving that clip lemon in line for Avatar, Flight of Passage.
Just on this long, straight hallway.
Can you imagine shitting on that ride and that motorcycle thingy? Oh my God. All right.
But in line, and you're like still waiting there. It's not like you tossed it out the window. It's like you took a shit and you're still standing
Do you
behind.
think you want to step over the piles of
shit?
poo? All right.
Oh, okay.
Partners in Crime Media.
At Staples Business Advantage, nothing can top the smarts and instincts of the thousands of experts on our team. While AI excels at
processing data, automating tasks, and providing insights for better decision-making.
And when they're used together,
They're far more powerful than either is alone. Whoa. I've never felt more alive.
Let Staples Business Advantage use today's latest innovations, plus our team's experience, to make business easier for you.
Sign up today and save 20%.
Staples Business Advantage.
Business is
human.